Okay? So that's the kind of contact zone I, we, they long for and partially construct. It's the kind that's at stake, and it's absolutely at stake in hunting rights of Inuit peoples. So I return to my primary guides and my notion of contact zones, and I go to, of course, dogs as my companions, and I point out to them repeatedly that the manual says right here, dog and handler form a team. Get it? We don't go off on our own. I've got a dog has me. We have each other. Who are we, and what is to be done? Okay? Well, the first dog who will enter this story is Cayenne, who was mentioned in the introduction. A purpose-bred, high-drive herding dog of the western United States, from the kind of dog that met the sheep imported from Australia to feed the gold miners of the post-Civil War U.S. conquest of California. She belongs to a lineage of white settler colonists of a particular kind, as I do too. We bonded on that basis, as well as several other bases. The fact that she was a high-drive sports companion of mine, and that we did our damnedest in agility, wearing that as one of our insignia. One of our teams of our agility teams was called Anarcha Aussies. All the dogs were Australian Shepherds, and all the women were named Maria in some form or another, including Madonna in my case. The Anarcha Aussies, of course, ran under Emma Goldman's Everybody's Right to Radiant Beautiful Things, under this Danish anarchist banner repurposed for dog agility in California. All of that counts as an aside. That's not actually part of the lecture. That was an indulgence. But the fact that Cayenne is a herding dog of sheep in conquest territory got me curious about sheep. And it got me curious about the sheep of California and the Spanish rough sheep. It got me curious about the whole history of commercial pastoralism as well as indigenous pastoralism. It got me curious about the way the Diné or the Navajo adopted the sheep of the Spanish and turned them into turned them into a kind of sheep that was really critical to cosmological performance, continuous weaving, to the weaving of Navajo people, to the cosmological weaving that goes into their rug work and their other weaving work, that the Navajo Churro sheep became absolutely essential to the practices of the Navajo on the Colorado Plateau in Diné Bequeya. The first slaughter of churro sheep in my story happens under Kit Carson in 1863 as part of the forced removal of the Diné into Bosque Redondo and prison camps in New Mexico for about 4 years. And as conquerors always do, they slaughter the plants and animals of the conquered peoples as means of subduing them and removing them from their means of subsistence. It has everything to do with what's going on in sealing in the circumpolar north. It had everything to do with the preferential slaughter of the churro sheep, the cutting down of the peach orchards, the cutting down of the corn, the removal of the Diné, and then their return after about 4 years with the promise of restocking, but very little actual restocking. Nonetheless, the Navajo, over a period of the next, 70 years, acquired large flocks of sheep, cattle, and horses and goats, to the extent that they were very much part of a very severe erosion pattern on the Colorado Plateau that led the progressive New Dealers under Roosevelt to point out that they had exceeded this thing called carrying capacity. Okay? These were officials who had absolutely no understanding of why the Navajo kept so many animals. For that, one needs to talk to Navajo, go to the archives of the Hubble Trading Post, look to the work of Kathy McCloskey, and Swept Under the Rug and Dreaming of Sheep and Navajo Country, where you learn such things as finished rugs of great quality that sell for today on the art market for hundreds of thousands of dollars, none of which goes back to the Navajo, okay, were sold as raw wool by weight in the trading posts in exchange for sugar and flour and other trading post items in a system of perpetual debt. So that having more and more sheep and weaving more and more rugs and selling more and more rugs as wool is very much built into a kind of forced birth a kind of forced birth and death, that indeed is very much part of destroying the land, destroying balance, destroying husro, destroying right relations of living with and in the land, that Navajo elders, well, not just elders, that Navajo learn as youngsters about the principles of husro. Now, I would suggest that this is a story of a missed contact zone, that the biological concept of carrying capacity is not a stupid concept. It has a dire history in all sorts of contexts, but not always. But the concepts of sustainability or carrying capacity and the concepts of right relations of the land could have been brought into serious conversation with each other that confronted the conditions of power of such a meeting. That the officials of the Roosevelt administration could have asked what the Navajo knew about their land. They could have asked how matrifocal pastoralism worked. They could have wondered how they're divvying up the land into rectilinear plots and the distribution of grazing rights to male-headed households forever after. They didn't have to do it that way. It didn't have to happen, but it did. And to this day, regulation of grazing permits in Navajo territories is extremely contentious. And to this day, the questions, it is almost impossible to raise the question of overgrazing because of this horrible history, which, among other things, was a profound decapitalization of the entire people. The first decapitalization, the first wieldy, the first originary trauma, in Toni Morrison's term, I'm informed by Cammie Chisholm, another HisCon grad student. The first originary trauma was really the removal under Kit Carson. The second originary trauma, I suggest, is the massive decapitalization of an entire people in the 1930s with the murder of their flocks. There is a really excellent book called Wastelanding, which looks at the history of uranium mining on these lands, the history of extraction that follows these stories. Okay. Well, this is not all a story of doom and gloom. You will not be surprised to hear. And there are many ways to tell a story of building coalitions in this land, and they all involve a remarkable cast of characters, including kosher jerky, the American Rare Breeds Association, the Genetic Repository, the Hispano farmers of the area, an Anglo agricultural scientist from San Luis Obispo who spent 40 years of his life running from the law trying to collect and build nucleus flocks of Navajo sheep, women in resistance on Black Mesa who received some of these sheep in the context of the forced removals from Black Mesa. The John McCain and his family, who were behind many of the forced removal legislation in 2 waves on Black Mesa. The building of an alliance that shut down the Black Mesa mine, not until after it had drained the aquifer, unfortunately, and shut down one of the major power plants. There are many stories to tell of alliance and partial healing in this area that bring together peoples who have decided not to be each other's enemies. But I want to just simply leave an example of one that inspires me in particular, and it's the Black Mesa Water Coalition and its climate justice program. Black Mesa Water Coalition has solar power, just transition programs, food healing through food, has all kinds of programs on Black Mesa. This is an organization that was started by young people, young students, Hopi and Navajo, more Navajo than Hopi, but both. And Jihon Jaron in particular was a Stanford student who got her BS in environmental sciences and is one of several very strong young adults in the Black Mesa Water Coalition. I read, we must fight for everyone to have clean water and clean lands. We have been here before. We have been impacted. We have been imprisoned. We have been pushed and beaten. The lives we want to live within our means, within the cycle of nature. This is climate justice. Refugees, migrants, land-based communities, and indigenous peoples, same causes, same fight. The Black Mesa Water Coalition was one of the groups that joined together in Phoenix, a youth art project, various community artists, about 3 or 4 other community groups, to paint this wall on the Valley Youth Theater in downtown Phoenix, which is the story of the struggle on Black Mesa. It's difficult to see because it's so big, but you've got Black Mesa, which is big mountain, a terribly important, a very important mother figure in the cosmology of Navajo geography. You've got the draining of the water for the golf courses and the heavily, as you probably realize, the coal of Black Mesa has been burned in the coal-fire generating plants in order to pump the Colorado River over the mountains so that it can feed the desert cities of the Southwest. It's a trans-basin water transfer world that we're talking about here, where the people from whom the coal and the water are extracted have neither energy, have not often, or still to this day, 2017, not electrified, or have access to clean water. So that the trans-basin water transfer projects around the world, the one I'll end this lecture with, unless I have to end because of the clock, actually is in Michoacan and relates to Mexico City, another kind of really important alliance in the story that I'm trying to tell. But you've got the Navajo Black Mesa Water Coalition people have been building wind projects in the Navajo Nation. They've been building solar projects. They've been developing indigenous food practices to address some of the diabetes issues, so forth and so on. And they were major players in the Paris Climate Justice Summit. They are really an impressive group of people that give me the sense that telling the stories of destruction are terribly important, but telling only those stories is a terrible mistake. Because the beings of the lands, airs, and waters are not finished. The human and the non-human entities of this earth that still are contesting for a vital Thulucene are still very much with us. So that's my first dog story. Cayenne wrote that part. My second dog story actually concerns my current dog, who came to join us about a year after Cayenne died. And turns out that she dropped out of the sky from Taiwan, and totally unexpected. I was looking for a local dog who needed a home, and I wrote on my internet, I wrote on my parameters for the Pet Finder search thing. I said, within 100 miles of Santa Cruz, Rustin and I would drive and meet the dog, see if this was the dog who should join our family, and so on. And Shindachu, who was the dog who has her back to you in that amazing calligraphy of play, Shindachu turned up on the screen, and I fell in love instantly in the way you do with the portraiture and the stories. I mean, there's that whole apparatus of inducing need and desire that goes on in the adoption scene. It's very powerful. It's really, really interesting the way that one is lured into love of a really non-negotiable kind. So that by the time I learned that the office was in the East Bay, but the dog was in Taipei, it was way too late. Way too late. Clearly she was ours, and she flew in an airplane with quite a lot of other dogs, and landed in California. And I took her name from an Ursula Le Guin novella, Paradise is Lost, which is a multi-generational spaceship story. And the Mandarin speakers of the first generation, by about the fourth generation out, the Mandarin term for where they're headed is Shindachu. So it means New Earth in bad Mandarin. And it seemed like the right name for my little Taipei stray dog. This next picture in front of you is Shindachu and I trying to learn some of the foundations of agility. She has focus to die for. I mean, when those eyes are on you, you do not let her down. She has her feet on an upside-down dog bowl. What she learns to do is put her front feet on this bowl and then circle around first that way and then that way. And then she does the same thing on the flexi disc, and then she does the same thing with her hind legs. What she really learns is where her body is. This becomes a game, and it's really great fun, but she is seriously paying attention. So she takes me to Taiwan, and I want to tell a contact zone story there, too. And I want to, first of all, show you a picture of dogs who are actually not supposed to exist in the world, but do just about everywhere, which is healthy village dogs. Healthy, free-roaming urban dogs. Dogs who are not maimed, starving, abused, dying quickly, who require rescue instantly, who must be swept up into a rescue apparatus, so on. I'm showing you the streets of Taipei in pictures taken by my friend Jim Clifford, pictures that can easily be taken by anyone who starts looking. But you could have also taken pictures from immensely overcrowded shelters, from essentially kill shelters. You could have taken any number of pictures also, because the forced life of the born ones affects not only the human population, 7.5 billion as I speak. The forced life, forced death of populations affects our companion species as well as ourselves.